are day 5 of the Genesis method. Today, we are breaking down 2 really important things, authority and dominion. Now, prior to this point, you remember we've talked about core motivators, vision statements in 5 key areas of our life. We've talked about our personal harmony coming through our cadence and our rhythm. We really started to dive into what are the consistency in our life. That's what we talked about yesterday. Remember, for signs and seasons, consistency of self, consistency of growth. Well, today in the creation story, we're following after Genesis 1, verse 20 through 23. This is where God does 2 really important things. He establishes birds in the air, and he puts teeming schools of fish, or teeming schools of living creatures in the waters. So he occupies the sky with living creatures, and he occupies the seas, the rivers, the lakes, the streams with living creatures. So the first thing we want to talk about is the birds in the air that he establishes. The birds in the air that he establishes really represent a posture of authority in our life. When birds are flying in the sky, they have that bird's eye view that we talk about. They have the ability to see and to govern from an elevated perspective. So they're not looking at things in a horizontal or based on the horizon, but they're looking top down. They're able to assess differently, and they're able to have a really different perspective of understanding. So one of the things that's important for us today on day 5 is to recognize that you have a certain posture of authority that you've been given in your life that will really lead to greater understanding. So as you cultivate and develop this year, that perspective that you have, where you're not just seeing things based on their horizon perspective, but you're seeing top-down perspective, that's really the place where you gain authority and you operate out of understanding. So you're not just taking things as they come your way, but you're able to evaluate and understand all of life and have a different perspective. We touched on this lightly on day 2, but we're really going to dive into it today on day 3. Thinking through, what does it mean for you in your life to really have that posture, that perspective of authority top down, where you can see and summarize all the different areas that you're responsible for. You understand all the moving parts of any situation, and you're able to really have a great understanding. And because of that, you can walk through life with a different perspective, or walk through maybe a specific situation with a different perspective, and really hold your authority in that place. Now, the second thing we're going to talk about today is dominion. If you think about the fish when they were moving in the sea, as soon as God put those fish in that sea, it changed the entire ecosystem of the water. So up until that point, the kelp, the algae, the different things were growing and they were progressing. But as soon as you put a life source in that water, it changes the ecosystem. It changes how things grow and respond. And some things really didn't take off in growth until they had those fish and those living things in the waters. So when we talk about the fish being created, what we're really starting to get an understanding of is dominion. Moving into a place and then changing the culture of that place because we exist in that environment. When we're talking about dominion, what I want us to really think about is this concept of syncing our resources. Now, it's easy for us to share resources and to spend resources in different ways and in different arenas in our life. But in order for us to really live in that cadence, that rhythm, that harmony, and maximize our year, we want to start to sync our resources together and really collect our resources together so we can see some of the best outcomes possible. What does that mean? Well, it means instead of looking and saying, I have to spend this amount of myself over here, this amount of myself over here, we want to really start to say is, how can I overlap some things to really bring about a great product and not compromise my outcome, but not spend so much of me in the process. Now, we've put so many different borders and boundaries in place in different areas, but now when we're talking about syncing our resources, we're really talking about what happened when those living creatures entered the water, when all of the sudden it was like they understood that this plant over here was dependent on being eaten over here, because then the waste of this animal actually helped produce this plant over here. So all the resources of the waters started to get synced together. So today, for your homework, you're gonna take some time. You're gonna identify 3 areas of your life where, 1, you have authority, and 2, you need to really begin to have good understanding of that area that you have authority. What that means is, I'm being made responsible here. I know I have a voice of authority here. Now I need to really elevate and say, I'm gonna have a top-down perspective. And because of that, I'm gonna really grow in my understanding. I'm not gonna get sidetracked. I'm not gonna get thrown off course by different things that come my way. Because I've been given authority, I'm really gonna grow my understanding. The second thing you're gonna do is you're gonna identify 2 areas where you wanna grow. So this is 2 areas where you already have authority. This is 2 areas where you're gonna grow in your dominion, meaning you're gonna start to sync resources, and you're gonna start to sync and overlap some areas so that you can really maximize the work, and you can actually begin to grow and not exhaust yourself, but really start to have a more harmonious life where things are synced together, growing and elevating and launching off of one another. Identify your authority, establish your dominion. When you do that, you'll gain understanding, you'll sync your resources, and you'll really start to find that life is not living you, but you are living life. That's what we get when we really mirror what happened on this great day 5 of the creation.